In this video, I'm going to show you how to make this swirling ring design. We've already done several simple ring designs on this channel. If you're interested in something more complex like this ring design that we put together, check out the link for my Patreon below. For this project, we'll be using 3 feet of 20 gauge half round in half hard, 6 inches of 16 gauge half round in dead soft, and 2 6-inch segments of 14 gauge half round, also dead soft. The stone that I've selected for this project is a 6 by 8 millimeter sapphire cab. We're going to start with our 20 gauge half round. We're going to find the center of this wire by taking both ends and sliding down till we find the middle of the wire. I have the flat side facing in and the rounded side facing out. Next, we're going to coil our half round. Our 20 gauge will be coiled entirely around our 2 14 gauge half rounds. As we're coiling these two together, I do want to make sure that they sit next to each other and are not overlapped. Once I have a few coils in place around both half rounds, I can adjust where it's sitting so it's in the center of our 6 inches. Now that we have this centered, we're going to coil down both sides of our half rounds. I went ahead and started coiling one side off camera just to prevent our 20 gauge round from continuously hitting the camera. Now that I have 20 on one side, we'll do 20 on our other side. Every 5 rotations or so, I'm going to take my pliers and flatten that half round to the surface of our 14 gauges. That'll ensure that our 2 core wires stay parallel next to each other and don't overlap. I'm going to continue coiling evenly on both sides until we reach the proper length for our ring size. For this ring, I'll be making a size 7. I've done approximately 40 rotations from the center out in both directions for 80 total rotations of 20 gauge half round. We have about 8 inches of leftover 20 gauge half round on each side, which is a pretty substantial amount of wire. Depending on the ring size you're working with, you may have more or less wire on each side, and can adjust the formula going forward. Let's go ahead and check it for size. For this, we're going to wrap it around our ring mandrel at the size we're looking for. Where the wires pass, there should be just enough uncoiled space for the size of our stone to sit on. In this case, our sizing looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and cut our remaining 20 gauge short and flatten it to the surface of the piece. secure both sides of our ring shank together, we'll be using our 6 inches of 16 gauge half round. In the same way that we did the 20 gauge, we're going to find the center of our 16 gauge so that we have equal working distance for both sides. We're going to slide this wire into the center of our ring to begin closing our ring in place. I once again want to make sure that all 4 segments of our 14 gauge sit parallel to each other and don't overlap. In order for this pattern to come together properly, it's important to note that our 16 gauge is coming across on the opposite side of where our 14 gauge are come up to the top. If your wires cross the other direction, like this, where our 16 gauge is coming up on the same side as the 14 gauge, it won't close properly for this design. I've passed our 16 gauge half round through the ring 4 times total. This is just enough space for our stone to sit comfortably on top of. Depending on the size stone that you're using, you may need to adjust the number of times that the half round passes through. If you need more than 4, you may need to increase the length of this half round wire. To secure this to size, we're going to pull our 14 gauge as tight as we can so that the 16 gauge comes flush with our 20 gauge here, and then put a kink 90 degrees into that wire. Once we have one side complete, we can do the same on the other side. At this point, we're going to double check our size to make sure that it's still fitting properly. If it all looks good, we can go ahead and move forward to setting the stone. The endings of our 16 gauge on either side will be the wires we actually use to set the stone. We're going to bring both 16 gauges all the way across the top of the ring design and begin folding them around the edges of the stone. You can adjust the stone to sit however you like. In this case, I'm going to have it slightly kiltered off to the right. To secure it into place, I'm going to pass both of my 16 gauge half rounds through the center of the ring. We can tighten this down over the stone by slowly leveraging our wire until it is properly tightened into place. On the inside edge of our ring, we want only the rounded side of the wire to be facing towards the finger. Now that we have this properly tightened and our stone set into place, we can go ahead and trim these endings short to secure everything in place. Our 14 gauge endings at this point are purely decorative. Our stone is set in place, and all we have to do is secure these wires to the shank of the ring. To start this pattern, I'm going to begin with my outside-most 14 gauge, bringing it flat over the face of the ring around the base of the second 14 gauge. Next, we're going to take that second 14 gauge, flipped over onto its side so that it can spiral out around towards the opposite side. We're going to secure this wire to our ring by passing it through and securing it next to the 16 gauge. Before we secure this wire, we're going to flip the ring around and repeat the same process on the other side. To secure our two remaining 14 gauge, we're going to pass them directly through the ring shank without crossing to the opposite side. To secure these wires into place, we're going to cut them both short and flatten them to the surface of the ring. And here we have our finished ring design. Something to be aware of, anytime that you're passing wires through the center of the ring, where it'll make contact with the finger, you want to make sure that it's as neat as possible to make the ring as comfortable as possible for the wearer. A special thank you goes out to all of the names on the screen for supporting this channel through Patreon. What I am doing would not be possible without your support. If you're interested in helping support the channel, follow the link in the description below this video. If you found this video helpful, leave me a like on the video. This helps me a lot with the visibility of my videos and YouTube's algorithms. To be the first to know when I upload new content, go ahead and subscribe to my channel and hit the bell to be notified when new videos are available. Thank you for watching, and happy wrapping.